Welcome to Clear 2 View News, where we bring you the unfiltered truth behind the headlines. Today we're diving deep into the latest round of judicial nominations. With the future of our courts hanging in the balance, it's more important than ever to stay informed. We've seen nominees dodge questions, twist the facts, and try to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people. Here at Clear 2 View News, we're cutting through the noise to bring you the real story. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update from Clear 2 View News.
Well, Judge Netburn, I want to continue on this line of questioning. In your court, what matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology?
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
Well, my political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology. This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole, but then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're asking me?
Yes, the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision based on what the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, the beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, the Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma.
If a potential judge can't handle tough questions, how are they supposed to handle the tough decisions? They just can't cut it.
This interest is legitimate, that's kind of you to say, but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical. Have you dealt, in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
Okay, I know you've been told to repeat the line, I follow the law. I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
This candidate seems to think that dodging every question is the best way to get confirmed. Guess what? We see right through it.
Also wrote, the BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown. I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women, and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault, I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered. I think you're a radical, and I think you have no business being a judge.
Judge Netburn, there was an opportunity during your exchange with Senator Cruz that you were attempting to offer a response relative to the conditions under which this petitioner was unsafe in the facilities in which she was being held. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to finish that response.
So the facts that were presented to me and what I relied on to make my decision were that the petitioner had engaged in no violence, no physical violence, no acts of sexual violence whatsoever while in custody. All three wardens who supervised the petitioner requested that she be transferred to a women's facility because of her serious medical needs. In addition, the Bureau of Prisons' longtime medical provider testified at a 2-day hearing in my courtroom and recommended that the petitioner be transferred because of her serious medical needs. And the last thing I'll say is that the Transgender Executive Council, which is the body that makes decisions on behalf of transgender transfer requests within the Bureau of Prisons, never said that the petitioner could not be transferred, and never, ever said that she couldn't be transferred because of any risk of violence. What the Transgender Executive Council repeatedly said in denying the request was simply that she needed to maintain her hormone levels. That was the repeated justification for the denial of transfer. But the petitioner had reached full female hormone levels before even being incarcerated. At the time, the district judge in Indiana who sentenced the petitioner requested that she be placed in a women's facility. Her hormones were entirely female at that point, and so the decision by the Transgender Executive Council to deny the transfer request based on this idea that it was only because her hormones needed to be consistent and stabilized, I found was a pretext, but they never once said she cannot be transferred because of violence. It was always based on this idea that our hormones had to be.
Thank you, Judge Netburn. Senator Padilla.
That's directly contrary to what your report said. That is directly contrary.
We need judges with integrity and transparency, not ones who play hide and seek with the truth. This nominee is a definite no-go.
Follow up, and that's how it works.
There is not.
That is exactly how it works.
Look,
if you follow up, you didn't get extra time, and she just directly contradicted her own report. I'm just going to read her own words because it's exactly the opposite of what she said. Your own report.
Senators, I gave both of you more time to finish your line of questioning. I allowed the witness to finish her. I allowed the witness to finish her response. I allowed the witness to finish her response. That is,
I understand that you're scared of the facts.
I have Senator Padilla.
Madam
can't
Chair,
just open
Thank you,
up
Madam Chair.
testimony and then
she
not
has an
give us a
obligation
chance
to explain
cross-examine?
why she directly contradicted what she wrote in her report. She says in her report, the Bureau of Prisons' claimed penological interest is in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. She just told you the Bureau of Prisons didn't say there was a concern about sexual violence and trauma. Those are directly contradictory, and why are you contradicting what you wrote in your report?
And what are you
Madam
trying to
Chair, I
hide,
believe
Madam
I have
Chair?
the floor.
No, wait, point of
I
order.
believe
Senator
I
Point of
Padilla.
order.
have the
What are you
Senator
floor.
trying to-
Padilla.
Congratulations to each of the nominees. Judge Cotto, I want to start with you. Is racial discrimination wrong?
Senator, our Constitution prohibits race discrimination, discrimination on the basis of race.
Okay, let me ask again, is racial discrimination wrong?
Senator, as a judge, I don't deal with issues of morality or whether something.
So you have no views on whether it's right or wrong?
Senator, because that is an issue that is frequently litigated before the courts pursuant to Canon 3 of the Code of Conduct.
Okay, so why does the Constitution prohibit racial discrimination?
Senator, I think it's part of our Constitution and this nation's history of aiming for equal justice and treating people, regardless of any protected class status, equally and fairly.
Did you notice how this nominee just couldn't give a straight answer? It's almost like they're hiding something, probably because they are.
So discriminating based on race violates, I think you just said, our Constitution's history of aiming for justice. Is that a fair characterization?
Senator, our case law, if you're talking about race discrimination under the law, yes, pursuant to Supreme Court precedent, race discrimination under the law is prohibited.
So you and I are both graduates of the Harvard Law School. We were there at the same time. I don't think we crossed
We did not.
As you know, our alma mater is currently before the Supreme Court for its longstanding practice of discriminating against Asian Americans. And many top universities across the country have vicious discrimination policies against Asian Americans. They are reminiscent of the quotas against Jews that we saw these same schools impose in the 1950s. These schools believe that Asian Americans have been too successful academically, and that if they allow students to compete based on merit, they'd have too many Asian Americans. And accordingly, Harvard and Yale and a number of other top schools in this country explicitly and brazenly discriminate against Asian Americans. Does that practice concern you?
Senator Cruz, as you know, the Supreme Court recently granted cert in the case to which I think you're referring.
Yes.
And therefore, pursuant again to Canon 3, I am
Okay, so you're going to
precluded.
decline to comment, so let's not talk about that.
If a potential judge can't handle tough questions, how are they supposed to handle the tough decisions? They just can't cut it.
Case, but let's talk about what you've written. You know, I have to say I was astonished. Senator Grassley asked you about this article you wrote in law school, and your response was, well, gosh, I haven't read that. In my experience, when people are nominated to be a judge, they do some preparation. Did you not reread it in preparation, or did the Biden team tell you don't read it because you don't want to answer questions about it?
Senator, I read it, but again, the question that Senator Grassley...
Okay, good. So you read it, so let's talk about it. I've read it sitting here, and I find it stunning. Look, there is a pattern of this administration nominating political activists and radicals to the bench, and they've done it for a year. And it's highly concerning. So I'm looking at what you wrote, your words. You described, quote, the Reagan presidency represented the pinnacle of the counteroffensive launched by the guardians of the status quo. In the face of institutional resistance, activist movements redirected their focus from liberation to survival. Do you believe there was a threat to the survival of Asian American groups under President Reagan?
Senator Cruz, again, that was a law review, book review.
I'm just asking if you agree with the sentiment. You wrote it.
Senator, I don't recall
Do you agree with it
what
now?
we were thinking.
Do you agree with the sentiment now? Not what you were thinking then. I'm not asking your state of mind then. I'm saying, do you agree with the words you wrote?
Senator, again, I don't know what our purpose.
I don't want your purpose then.
Another nominee, another round of evasive answers. It's becoming painfully clear that they aren't fit for the bench.
Today, as you listen to the words you wrote, do you agree with them or do you think I was wrong?
Senator, without the complete context.
Okay, let's read a little bit more then. You talk about the neoconservative view, and here's what you define an Asian neoconservative: as someone with an opposition to racism, so that's good, but a commitment to ending affirmative action programs. And you write, quote, the neoconservatives' narrow vision of success currently threatens to impose divisions within the Asian American community and among different ethnic groups. Emphasizing personal achievement and success as measured by the status quo, the Asian American neoconservative fails to acknowledge the shared history of oppression and then ties their individual success to the survival and liberation of all oppressed peoples. Judge Cotto, as I read this, what you're saying, and if you will permit me to use a more common vernacular, you're saying that to be sufficiently woke, an Asian American must support policies that discriminate against Asian Americans. I got to tell you, that doesn't make sense. Is my reading of what you wrote incorrect?
Senator Cruz, again, we are talking about something that I wrote when I think I was a 23-year-old
But do you agree
law
with it
student.
today? I'm not asking what you thought then. I'm saying today, as you sit here, as the Senate is considering you for a lifetime appointment as a judge, do you agree with what you wrote that Asian Americans, to be sufficiently liberated, must support discrimination against Asian Americans?
Senator, without the complete context of that particular quote that you've excised,
I read it to you.
I cannot give you whether my opinion today, whether or not I agree with what I said as a 23-year-old law student.
Why does this nominee refuse to answer simple questions? Because they know their real opinions would disqualify them.
At your resume here, it's very full. You look like someone who's very busy. You're a counsel at a law firm presently, Kaplan, Hecker and Fink. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator, that is correct.
And also a co-director at a civil rights clinic at Howard. Is that correct? Got that right?
That's correct, Senator.
So it doesn't look like to me you have a lot of free time. I imagine that you choose what you invest your time in very carefully. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Senator.
You are also on the board of a group called the Immigrant Justice Corps. Do I have that right?
Yes, Senator.
Let me just ask you about this group that you are a part of, that you're a board of directors, a member of, and the positions they've taken. They've taken a lot of positions. You've taken a lot of positions when it comes to immigration policy, including saying recently that this president's policy, President Biden's recent policy to restrict temporarily some of the flow across our southern border, when on a given day there are multiple thousands of illegal migrants crossing. The president said that after there are multiple thousands on any given day, he would temporarily restrict somewhat the flow, but which, by the way, I think is way too late in the game. He should be doing much more. Your group, however, has been exceptionally critical of this. They have said that any restriction of the flow across the southern border is an abhorrent betrayal of American values and is inhumane. Cruel and inhumane, to be precise. Tell me about that. Is it your view that any enforcement of our immigration law, that if we have anything other than an open border, the policy is cruel, inhumane, and an abhorrent betrayal of American values?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I do not believe that statement to reflect a request for open borders. I have never taken that position. I can tell you, I'm not familiar with that particular statement. I can tell you why I joined the organization, the board of the organization, and it is because I believe in its mission to provide quality counsel to individuals who are going through removal proceedings. It was an idea that was inspired by the late Judge Katzman's study about the efficiencies of providing such counsel to individuals who are going through removal proceedings. And I understand that the organization engages in advocacy and policy, and that if confirmed, my role as a judge would be to put any such advocacy and policy aside.
Well, let me just ask you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my time is going to tick down here quite quickly. I just want to get clear on this. Is it your position that restrictions on the flow of illegal migrants, just to be, well, let me just ask you this more fundamentally. Do you believe we have a crisis at the southern border?
Senator, I do not believe it is my position to opine on such policy questions. I think those policy questions are very important for
But you're a member
this
of a
body.
board of directors. You're a director at an organization that has taken many such positions. So it seems to me you have taken a position. Your organization certainly has. You represent them. You're a member of that board. You choose your time very carefully, as we established just a moment ago. They say that any restriction on the flow of illegal migrants, I want to be clear about this, illegal migrants is abhorrent. It is a betrayal of American values. It's cruel and inhumane. Is that your position?
Senator, I am not familiar with that specific statement. My
June the 5th,
affiliation,
2024. It's a press release from your organization.
my affiliation with the organization does not commit me to every position it takes
So this
on
is
law
not your
and policy.
position?
No, Senator.
You disagree with this?
Senator, I joined the organization to support its mission to provide counsel to individuals going through removal
Okay,
proceedings.
let me ask you about that since you bring that up. You have also advocated for providing counsel, in fact, taxpayer-funded counsel, to every asylum seeker at our border. Do you know how many credibility and fear determinations the Customs and Immigration Service performed just in 2023 at the southern border?
No, Senator, I am not aware of that number.
146,000. 146,000 in 2023 alone. So you are in favor of taxpayer funding for attorneys for at least 146,000 illegals. Is that right?
Senator, I was counsel on 2 matters that advocated for the right of counsel for a limited class of non-citizens.
This is your organization that you're a member of the board of directors of. On May 27th, 2022, your organization submitted this official comment to a DHS rule in which you specifically advocated for counsel to be provided at government expense to all asylum seekers. I mean, that's quite a position. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people are going to get illegal migrants are going to get government-funded attorneys under your proposal. Is that right? Is that your position?
Senator, any policy position that I have taken in my role as an advocate, I understand that I would be taking an oath to put that aside and to dedicate myself instead to the fair and impartial application of the law, and that is what I commit to you I would do in every case.
Seeing this nominee avoid every substantive question just cements the fact that they aren't suited for a lifetime appointment.
Do you still think that detaining people at the border is motivated by, I'm quoting now, motivated by financial incentives and political calculations rather than any legitimate or evidence-based purpose?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that statement.
Well, that's from another statement made by your organization in September 22nd, 2021. Let me just say it again. Detaining people at the border is motivated by financial incentives and political calculations rather than any legitimate or evidence-based purpose. That just seems crazy to me, to say that enforcing our laws and detaining folks who are here illegally, crossing illegally, is motivated solely by financial incentives and political calculations. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I joined the organization to support its mission to provide counsel.
Yeah, I've heard that answer, but do you agree with this? You're a member of the board of directors of this organization that frankly has taken crazy positions over and over. I'm just wondering if you agree with these positions. So this is just a yes or a no. Do you agree that detaining people at the border is motivated solely by financial incentives and political calculations?
Another nominee, another round of evasive answers. It's becoming painfully clear that they aren't fit for the bench.
Senator, I'm not familiar with that position.
But do you agree with it? It's from your organization that you sit on the board of directors of. Just do you agree with it, yes or no?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the context.
Do you agree with it? You're not going to answer my question, sounds like.
Senator,
You just say yes if you agree, that's fine, but say no if you don't. I mean, I'd like a yes or a no answer. It's a simple question. You're on the board of directors, they've issued this. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Senator, I joined the organization to support its mission.
Goodness. This is disappointing. I don't understand why won't you answer me? Are you afraid of the answer that won't be popular? I mean, why are you distancing yourself from it now? Aren't you still a member of this organization? You're still on the board, aren't you?
Yes, Senator, I still serve on the board.
Okay. Well, so you don't agree with any of these positions? You won't say now whether you agree or not. Is it because they're so radical?
Senator, my personal position on any policy issue would play no role in the job that I would perform as a judge if I were to be confirmed.
You've also written a paper in which you say that you don't think police ought to enforce traffic laws because it may lead to inequity. Do you remember that paper from 2023?
Yes, Senator.
Why is that? You don't want police to enforce traffic laws? I mean, it just seems to me, I'm having trouble following your positions here. You don't want the immigration laws to be enforced. You apparently think that any detention of illegals at the border is motivated by political calculations and is illegitimate, and you don't want police to be enforcing traffic laws. But you want to be a judge. How's this going to work?
Senator, the piece that you are citing documented efforts by cities along with police departments, and in some cases actually led by police departments, to move enforcement of things like hanging an air freshener from a rear view mirror to, for example, ticket by mail or parking enforcement, which would in turn free up police resources to focus on more serious.
When a nominee can't even be honest about their past rulings, it raises a huge red flag. What else are they lying about?
Enforcement.
Yeah, I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. Not just that, though. I mean, I encourage people to read the paper. In fact, I've got it right here. It's 14 pages. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask consent to enter into the record the road to driving equality. Frankly, it is full of positions that I think are just nuts. I mean, saying that things like running traffic lights, stop signs, these things can't be enforced, that the police ought to get out of enforcement of traffic laws altogether. I mean, I don't understand it. It sounds like to me you don't want enforcement at the border, you don't want enforcement of our traffic laws, you don't want police enforcement in our cities. I just question whether that is a good set of perspectives to be a judge whose job will be to enforce the law.
That's all for today's deep dive into the murky world of judicial nominations. We hope we've given you a clearer view of what's really going on behind the scenes. Remember, staying informed is the first step in protecting our democracy. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to Clear 2 View News for more in-depth analysis and fearless reporting. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.